think you all know by now that I really detest sanding. It's probably the worst job there is in woodworking. And I try to avoid it as much as I can, having finished surfaces coming straight off the plane. But there are some situations where you do need to sand, or where it's much more efficient to sand. Recently, Tool Nut in the UK sent me some of their foam-backed abrasives to try out. The first one is these foam-backed abrasive sheets. Now I've got a range of abrasives here, from ultra-fine through to medium. Unlike paper, you can fold these and they won't crack. They don't produce really sharp or ragged edges. Now to test those out today, I've got a piece of oak, which is fairly standard over here. This has just come straight off a surface planer. Clamped up here on the bench, I've got a piece of yew, which is very pippy, very difficult to plane a good surface on it. I've used a cabinet scraper and I've done a little area in the middle here to prove that it is perfectly possible to do it with a scraper, sorry, a card scraper. And I've left the other half, which I'm going to do with the sandpaper. So let's get started. I don't know if you can see, but this area here is lovely and smooth, which is what I've done with the card scraper. This area here, still rough. So I'm going to go through the grits, starting with the medium. I've finished with the medium grit now, and it's nice and smooth, but not as smooth as where I've used the card scraper. But I've still got 3 more grits to go. And that's a match now for the area that I've used the card scraper on. In fact, I'd say it's smoother. They grip better to my sanding block, so I'm not having to press so hard with my thumb and fingers. Also, I don't feel that I've got any sores on my fingers where the paper normally cuts because I'm pressing it so tight. Now I'll give those a quick go on the oak. This oak has come straight from the surface planer. It's got a little bit of ripple on it. Then finally onto the ultrafine. That feels gorgeous. That's lovely and flat, lovely and smooth. Another situation where these foam-backed abrasives should be useful is when we've got a curved profile. Like here I've got some fluting with the foam-backed. It rolls really easily, whereas paper can crack. So you roll it up, it produces the same shape as the profile. Very easy to use. And of course it unrolls and there's no damage. So they're ideal for doing this sort of work. Now another product which Tool Nut asked me to look at is this abrasive on a foam pad. That gives you a 135 degrees, 45 degrees, a 90 degrees and a radius which I think is about perhaps ½ inch. And all of those can be squeezed slightly to different profiles. So again, in the same application, if I squeeze, it will go down into the flute and does an excellent job. Now some of you will have seen my Living with a Stanley 45 series. Produced a number of different profiles using the 45. Centre beading, quite difficult I find to sand by hand. I'll take a piece of sandpaper, fold it up a few times and try and sand it like that. It's hard on the fingers, you've got to keep them pressed hard to hold on to the piece of sandpaper. The paper itself doesn't want to fold nicely. It's not great. I mean, it's how I do it, and you just take your time and you'll get there eventually. But with these profile blocks, I think you can see that if you press that in against the bead, it actually takes the shape of the bead and it's just so much easier. You've got a big lump to hold on to, a few strokes up and down, and the job's done. Now I just want to test out the claim that these can be unclogged by washing in water. And indeed they can, very easily, just under a tap. So do I like sanding now? No, of course not. My workshop is full of fine dust. It's horrible. But I do find it a little bit more tolerable with these foam-backed abrasives for many tasks. They're a lot easier on the hands because you don't have to grip it so tightly. They don't form ragged edges. They conform to profiles when you're sanding, so you don't need to make your own profiles for sanding. I think it makes the job a little bit easier, and I don't dislike it quite as much as I did. I'd recommend you try them out for yourself. There's bound to be tasks that you find a lot easier using these than regular sandpaper. I'll be keeping some in the workshop. Now I've just demonstrated today on wood, and of course mainly my channel's about wood, and that's what you'll be watching for. But you can use these on other things, and for a woodworker perhaps metal would be the next area that you'd use them on, in tuning planes and other tools. And I'm doing a plane restoration video quite soon, and I'll be using some of these abrasives as I tune up a number 5, so watch out for that. Thanks to Toolnut for providing these samples, and I'll say cheerio.